Just want to talk about this reading from Isaiah, but let me just start by springboarding from the gospel, this business of salt and light and the lamp in the house and so forth. It's kind of projects outward, our testimony to the world, testimony of the church to the world. Has to begin at home, though. Has to begin at home. We gotta be mindful of that. Too often, it's much easier to focus outside, outside the church, on the world in big, general, grand terms. That's easy. I feel like we're a pain in the neck at home, but boy, are we concerned about social justice. You get where I'm coming from here, It's like, okay, it's got to start at home, but let's get real about this whole thing. I feel like the Lord's kind of rebuking Israel about this, about their fasting, religious hypocrisy, and just, they're just doing these things. It's formalities. Their heart's not really in it. Knowledge of their faith is just things they memorize by rote. It's not really in their heart. It's got to be real, and I like what C.S. Lewis here says. He says, the enemy, now this is a demon speaking, okay, in the Screwtape letters. Uncle Screwtape is writing letters to his underling, Wormwood, his nephew, who's in charge of winning this guy's soul for their Father below. All right, so you got to kind of flip the thing around to get this. But so here's the evil one speaking really about God, referring to God as the enemy. So flip it around when you hear this. The enemy will be working from the center outwards. In other words, he's concerned about how our conduct in our homes. So this homily, I just want to kind of hit us where we live a little bit here. Screwtape continues, the great thing is to direct the malice that we all have, certain, malice, and to his immediate neighbors whom he meets every day, and to thrust his benevolence out to the remote circumferences, to people he does not know. Keep on shoving all the virtues outward. And we do all these great things for humanity. And we're a pain in the neck at home. I want to look at this text from Isaiah a little bit. Just a couple verses. Which I feel like hit us where we live. Hit us where we live here. If you take away from the midst of you, okay, in the middle of us. One thing Screwtape says in the Screwtape letters, says he refers to the horror and neglect of the obvious. That we can't see what's right under our nose. We're always looking up, outwards to the circumference when it comes to practicing virtue. And then we pat ourselves on the back to beat the band. So the midst of us, if you take away from the midst of you, right in your face, the yoke, oppression. That's how it's translated in the lectionary, but a yoke or oppressing behavior. We oppress people. With our silent treatment or all sorts of different crafty, ingenious ways that we can kind of be a tyrannical dictator around the house and act out passive-aggressively in all sorts of ways, having our feelings hurt all the time or giving people the silent treatment, all sorts of rude behaviors and inconsiderate behaviors towards others. Even a certain oppressiveness about our being unselfish, and the self-righteousness that comes from that. And then we pride ourselves in our unselfishness, and we're always deferential, but really inside, I don't know, it's C.S. Lewis, again, in the Screwtape letters, he exposes human nature. and hidden vices that hide in virtues oftentimes. He doesn't like the word unselfishness. The devil likes it. It's kind of like part of their indoctrination. They want to get us away from charity, active, positive charity. It's the language, terminology of Christianity. Unselfishness is kind of turning the whole thing back on ourselves. If we stop talking about charity and we reduce everything, the moral life, to unselfishness, unselfishness turns it back on us and our being unselfish. And that leads to sometimes self-righteousness. And you're always being deferential all the time. But I don't know, it's more about us sometimes, a little bit. Unselfishness. I know we don't typically understand it that way, but I get C.S. Lewis's point. Pride can get in there, the enemy can get in there, and we go around patting ourselves on the back to beat the band because we're so unselfish. Meanwhile, we can be kind of a tyrannical dictator. I'll save that for another homily, but charity is what we need to focus on, folks. Let's use the proper terminology of Christianity. Active charity, which focuses on the good of the other, not simply us being unselfish. Now, the pointing of the finger is my translation. Pointing of the finger. We all do that. We get up in our household and shine that great big spotlight on everybody else's character defects. We know everybody's defects of character that we live with and work with, We know what buttons to push, and, we just know their insecurities. And there's all kinds of little subtle ways we hurt each other. Or we're blind to our own. We can be blind to our own. We think we're perfect. Can't forget when you point the finger. I always like to point this out. Point the finger. Don't forget to turn your hand over. And remember, you got 3 more pointing back at you. I know we've all heard that a million times, but that's so true. Pointing the finger, man, it's primordial. Goes back to the Garden of Eden. Adam. The woman that you put here with me, she did it. And then the woman's like, the servant you put in here, you point the finger. We all do that. So blame shifting, shifting the blame and pointing at others. Huge. Speaking wickedness. Go with I was looking at the Greek translation of the Old Testament is the word murmur or grumble, complain. Okay, so that's a affliction of the people of Israel when they're in the wilderness, complaining, grumbling, murmuring, murmur. It's kind of an onomatopoeia. It's like the cooing of doves. Murmur, murmuring, complaining, grousing. I like that word. You ever heard grouse in the forest? It scares the heck out of you. Can't tell where it's coming from. It's like in your inner ear. You hear this bum, 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 bum. Raise your hand if you've heard a grouse, so I don't have to feel stupid up here. Ruffed grouse. Yeah, you can't tell what direction it's coming from. You're walking through the woods and you're like, all right, look, grousing has become a term. It's it's kind of, it's a good term, but that goes on a lot in the workplace and at home. Murmuring, grumbling, complaining all the time. I'm telling you, we're a pain in the neck. We're a pain in the neck. All the different ways we can be a pain right under our nose, and we're oblivious of it. All right, so if you pour out yourself for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, I like that. Now we're talking about something positive here. Positive charity now. Feeding the hungry. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean, it could mean, but, literal sense of getting the Kraft macaroni and cheese out and the hamburger helper, okay, and feeding everybody. That's one way to think of it, sure. But really, what are we all hungry for? The famous philosopher in the United States, he summarized it, that everybody's got a hungry heart. Everybody's got a hungry heart. And what are we really hungry for, Bruce Springsteen? What are we really hungry for? We're hungry for love. Everybody's walking around with a great big sign on their chest all day long, all around us, if we could just see it. It's invisible, but it's there. It says, do you love me? Do you love me? That's what people want. That's what they want to know. That's the question all the time in that look. That's the question in that lead-in, where they're inviting you to ask them a question about something. They want you to draw them out. They want you to hear them, perhaps. Listening to people is how we show them love. I respect you, and I want to hear about your day. Yeah, tell me about that. Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Listening to people. They're hungry, and they want to be loved. So really, that's behind so much human behavior is that question, do you love me? We're all hungry for. We all have a hungry heart for that. Are we satisfying that hunger in the home of everybody around us? That's what God is talking about here. And satisfying the desire of the afflicted. The afflicted, they were all broken and hurting, sick, spiritually sick, all of us. Are we ministering to that, to others around us who are broken and hurting as well, and being forgiving, and put the balm of mercy on their wounds? Okay, being the first to say, I'm sorry, trying to be a peacemaker, all these things. When we do those things, then we'll have real salt in our homes first, where we live. Then we'll be the light. We'll have light in our homes, lamp in our house, illuminating the whole household. The whole domestic life right there has to be lit up with that light before we can share it with the world.